Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Hygiene. I'm so glad to have you joining us today. And I just got to say, for all of you Bulletproofers, if you have not yet signed up for our annual summit, you got to do it. You do not want to miss this. We are going to have such a great time and such great content. It is going to be June 14th and 15th out in Scottsdale, Arizona. Beautiful landscape. Come join us, please. And to get more information and to register and bring your team, please, because that's where it's at when we can practice together as a team. Check out bulletproofsummit.com and you'll get all the information. I can't wait to see you there. So you guys, I'm really excited for this show today. As usual, we are talking about my biggest passion. You guys know the oral systemic connection and how we as the dental community can fulfill our role as lifeguards. And I don't know about how you guys grew up, but I spent most of my summers, I'm originally from Houston, Texas. So Houston in the summer is pretty brutal, heat-wise, humidity-wise. So I spent a lot of my summers trying to escape that heat in a swimming pool. And I remember as a kid being so frustrated when the lifeguards would blow the whistle and announce adult swim, which, meant we kids had to get out of the pool and take a break. And I never honestly gave it much thought, the concept of lifeguards, until I had kids of my own. And then I really appreciated the opportunity to have someone else, a professional who had a really good vantage point from high up in those tall chairs, and the necessary tools and training to jump in and save someone who was struggling or, heaven forbid, drowning. And as hygienists, we hear more and more buzz about how our role can save lives too. We also have a perfectly positioned seat and lots of tools and expertise to identify many risk factors and conditions that compromise our patients' health and longevity. We too, when practicing at our full potential, can save lives. So today, I would like us to embrace our role as lifeguard with our amazing guest, Cris Duvall. After practicing 46 years of hygiene, Cris has become a passionate patient health advocate and wellness coach. She has been recognized for her contributions to science and patient-centered dental hygiene. She sits on the advisory board of Oral Cancer Cause, Dental Entrepreneur Women, and the Children's Airway First Foundation. Cris founded the Lifeguard approach, which is focused on helping dental and medical teams shift their mindset from repairing the damage to preparing patients for health. It's really being prevention-minded, which is what we're always talking about embracing. Cris describes herself as an architect of change in dentistry's approach to oral systemic health, and her ultimate goal is saving lives by guarding and guiding health and wellness. Cris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you are extremely passionate about being a lifesaver from the hygiene chair, and it's your own personal life experience that drive this mission. So will you please share, I know you have several stories that kind of led you to making the shift from just doing standard hygiene to practicing more of a complete health model?
Well, as far as my hygiene experiences go, in 2000 and 2001, I literally totally burned out. So I quit my job. But I realized I had to go back to work financially. And so I decided to position myself with somebody that maybe had a different philosophy of care and a different approach to how they took care of patients. And so I sought out Dr. Brian McKay, who happened to live in my city, excuse me, and I got a job with him, and I was so excited. And the first week that I worked there, he took me to lunch. And now this isn't what he said, but this is what I heard. Do you know the difference?
Yes, yes.
So what I heard him say was, I want you to start a wellness program. He said, I want you to, at least what I heard was, he said, I want you to play a bigger role in our patients' lives than just a dental hygienist. And he said, I want you to paint a bigger canvas of what a hygienist can be in their lives. And I want you to start a wellness program so that patients can come back to see you when they're healthy and maintain that health. So along the way, I heard that he would give me continuing education, the technology that I needed, and a personal coach. So that's what launched the wellness program. I didn't have any idea of how to do that, and there weren't many people doing that in 2001. So I had to figure out what would work best and what I could do as an approach with my patients. And so I drew on a personal experience that I had in a swimming pool, just like you. And I was a competitive swimmer. I was very good. I usually won every event, and I swam one race and I won it, and I was waiting for the other swimmers to finish. So I turned around and leaned against the back of the wall, and I blew a great big bubble. I had swam that race with a big wad of bubble gum tucked underneath my tongue. And what I didn't realize was, as I was getting out of the pool and exiting, the lifeguard had gotten off of her perch, and the timer in my lane was a physician that knew me. And they stopped me on the way out of the pool, and they asked me a question that I've never forgotten. And their question was, do you want to live to be an adult?
Wow.
And I said, of course, yes, I would. And they said, well, if you had aspirated that gum anywhere along in that race and gone dead in the water, we wouldn't have known how to help you. And we probably wouldn't have been able to save your life. So I took that event because I've always remembered that, and it's been a real anchoring event. And I decided I wanted to use that approach of how they saved my life to hopefully save the lives of my patients, because that was what I was most interested in. And I figured that's what I'll do as far as starting this wellness program, is I'll approach it as a lifeguard who guards and guides the health and wellness of her patients. So that's how it all started.
That's incredible. And I'm so glad they did stop and ask you that question. And so for our listeners listening in, I think so many times we think about wellness from the dental chair as just an oral wellness situation, where we think about our patients coming in and we're keeping them healthy, where they're not having active decay or they're not in an active state of periodontal disease. And we think that's enough. That's our role, to really keep patients healthy. But I know you have a much bigger picture, and like you said, a much broader canvas to that. And I know that also came from some personal experience in your life. Would you share a little bit on that front of how much bigger this picture really is?
Well, it's huge, and I'm not sure exactly which experience you're relating to, but I want to go back to the lifeguard and the physician stopping me, if I could, for just a moment, because I think that's an important point that you brought up. As they were really fulfilling their role, and they could have gotten together on the sidelines and said to each other, what a stupid girl, and let me walk out of the pool with not taking the time or the concern, and most importantly, the compassion that's needed for us to save our patients' lives. And so that's a really big thing. And I think that when you take on the role as a lifeguard to guard and guide, you have to speak up like they did in my life. And you have to, when you see something that could be impacting their health and wellness, in their lifestyle and their diet and their habits, when you see something, you've got to say something. And that's kind of been my motto all along, is when you see something, say something. So
yes. Well, and I was alluding to, I know that you tragically lost your husband to a health-related issue, and that was a big motivation for you as well, of really understanding more from a total health standpoint of airway and that sort of thing.
yes, and the most interesting thing to me was that I had scheduled appointments for my husband and me. His name is Gary. with Amy Doneen at the Heart Attack and Stroke Prevention Center in Spokane. And he decided at the last moment that he was not going to go because he was being seen and cared for by Seattle's best cardiologist. And he thought, well, Cris, what's the point in me going? She's just going to redo all the tests that Amy's going to do, or that he did. And so what's the point? And so I didn't know enough at that time to really be persistent with him. And that's the one thing I regret, is that I should have been more of a bulldog about that, because I do know that, and I'm confident that if he had gone, he would be alive today after receiving the care from Amy and the thoroughness and the focus that they place on inflammation and the role that plays in our health and wellness. And so I think that's a big distinction too. It can be like, you know, a lifeguard that doesn't say anything or doesn't use any of her tools that she has at her hand to help her patients that are in the pool. There was a big distinction between what he was doing and what Amy Doneen was doing as far as her patient care. And I look at what we're able to do today as an opportunity to throw our patients a lifeline.
Yes.
And pull them from that deep end where they may drown or die from whatever the circumstances may be, that when we really match up what we know now and our protocols and the science that's out there today, when we really match those up, it really creates a distinction in the quality of care that you're getting from different providers. And so obviously I had to ask the doctor if he was doing a C-reactive protein on my husband. And he goes, well, no, why would we do that?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's such a testament to, you know, there's such a broad spectrum of what's happening in medicine. It is the same thing in dentistry. And I am so appreciative and in awe of people like yourself that are taking the steps to say, we've got to do this differently. There's so much more that we can do. There's so much more we can be. We can be those preventative practices, those bail and Deneen situations for people to really, truly help them achieve health and true prevention.
Yes. And, you know, when we unfortunately had to remove Gary from life support, I crawled into his bed and held him until he was in the arms in heaven. But I promised him, I thanked him for being my life's partner. And I thanked him for the gift of giving me purpose for the rest of my life, because I promised him I would make a difference with it. So
yeah, that's incredible. And you know, obviously my heart goes out to you for what you've been through in losing him, but I'm so inspired by your dedication to keep that promise, to make the rest of your life matter, and to do so in helping others to save lives. I know that we have listeners that just really span the gamut of practices, from those that are very educated and have great systems in place for practicing comprehensive dentistry and complete health dentistry, to those that honestly may have done kind of the basic CEs on repeat and may still be working in more of a bloody prophy based kind of practice. So talk to us about how we can embrace a mindset of becoming a lifeguard.
well, my position is, I think that there's a bigger purpose to a hygiene visit than calculus removal. And I think the purpose for me and for other lifeguards like yourself, the purpose of a hygiene visit is for screenings.
Yes.
screenings of risk factors that we now know impact people's health and wellness. And I think the biggest thing for me is that I realized that ignoring clinical based evidence for whatever reason, and I'm talking about risk factors here, ignoring risk factors for whatever reason can have a catastrophic impact on people's health and wellness. It opens the door for disease if we don't pay attention to them, and it can cause catastrophic problems and even death for our patients.
Yes.
So for me, oral systemic health is identifying risk factors and then mitigating them. So I look at it and I talk about it in terms of when a patient comes in to see me, whether it's for recare or as a new patient, I always establish what their risk factors are, where they are today. And then I ask them with a very specific question, where do they want to be? And so that moves them from what I call and have coined the danger zone into the safety zone. And so as a lifeguard hygienist, all you have to do is step into that gap that's created from where they are and where they want to be. And that is a gap or a zone of desires for the patients. And they want what we can help them get. And so that zone of desire, I figured out that in order to get my patients living in that zone of desire to make changes, that I had to ask one question. It's an important question. And if I don't know the answer to that question, when I go in to see a patient, you might as well take a 3-inch piece of duct tape and put it across my mouth, because I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to frame my conversation. And that question is, tell me about what you want for yourself.
Yes. Yes.
Because that opens up that zone of desire, because we know people buy what they want, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Buy what they desire. And so they're going to be more engaged in accepting treatment and just having you be able to coach them. That's what I look at myself as I'm a coach, because I can help. Because what we know is coaches get you places you want to be faster, don't they?
Yes.
So I just figured out a way to move them from the danger zone to the safety zone, and I help them live in that zone. And I'll tell you, it doesn't come from scraping calculus off people's teeth.
Yes, I recently, I was at one of our Bulletproof Doctors retreats, and I made the statement, the least important thing we do as hygienists is polish and scrape teeth. And I loved it because I had a couple of dentists applaud that statement, but it's true. And I think, unfortunately, there's still a very large contingent of hygienists and practices out there that are still in that mindset of just scraping and polishing and walking out the door. And I think, there are some barriers that we've got to overcome. Some of those are our own mindsets on it, obviously, but there's so many things that I think stand in the way. I feel like, I get to coach a lot of hygienists, and I hear them say, I just don't feel like I know enough about this. So I don't feel educated enough to be able to share. And I get uncomfortable if, patients start asking me questions, or we haven't yet implemented this testing in our practice, or I don't even know where to start. I don't have the time. That is a very common phrase that I hear. And I keep saying, I think we're going to have to smash the hourglass of what hygiene looks like, and stop with the expectation of that we're doing a cleaning at an appointment, and instead make it about an assessment appointment before we go anywhere. But all of that to say, I know you help practices and providers create a roadmap for practicing at this level. So will you give us an overview of what that looks like when we think about stepping into our full potential and really practicing that lifeguard approach?
Well, there's 3 things. The first one is your mindset, like you were talking about. And for me, that was, I needed to shift my limiting beliefs to empowering beliefs. because I had the attitude, you know, my patient's dental IQ is so low, the insurance companies won't let me do more. My boss is not letting me do more. My patient's dental IQ will never improve. So I had lots of things that were holding me back just in terms of what I could accomplish with, I thought I could accomplish with patients. So shifting your limiting beliefs to empowering beliefs is huge, because the one thing you have to realize that will work for you, but when you have limiting beliefs that works against you, is no matter what you think, it will come true.
Yes.
So if you believe you can't, you won't. But if you believe you can, you will. And so I adopted a belief that I could help anybody. I could impact every single person's life that sat in my chair. So shifting your limiting beliefs is huge. And I have a book coming out, and I'm writing about all of this in a book. It'll be out in probably 3 months. So I'm excited about that.
Yes, I
But
love it.
second thing is to develop a new message that is personal to the patient, is practical to the patient, and that it has a sticky message. One that they will remember. It won't go in one ear and out the other when they leave the your operatory. And it'll be a message that they'll be so amazed by it that they'll want to go home and tell their family and friends about what you said. And that has profound impact on your practice and your ability to acquire new patients, because your patients, when you start treating them like this, they'll become mavens for you, and they will be referring everybody, because that's, I went to get my teeth cleaned, and guess what? I found out about oral cancer, and I had an oral cancer screening for the first time in my life. So anyway, your messaging is extremely important. Shift that from communication and scripts to that personal messaging, personal, practical, and sticky. And that will make a big difference. And update, in part of your messaging, you must update your questions, because up until now, the questions in dentistry and hygiene do not match our science, do they? So a lot of hygienists will say to their patients, do you brush and floss? Well, we now know brushing and flossing isn't enough to mitigate periodontal disease or cavities or anything. So a better question is, and a quality question is what I call them, is tell me about when your gums bleed. Because here's what we know about bleeding, right?
Yes.
Excuse me. And then the third thing to shift is your clinical habits. And they've got to be matched with today's science.
Yes.
And doing bloody prophies certainly is not matched with today's science. And so because of what the science that we know, that just shows you that we have to be doing life-saving screenings at every appointment on every patient. And you could vary what you do. I did an oral cancer screening on every patient at every visit. From an experience, what I had in hygiene school, my husband's grandfather was my patient. And I found what turned out to be oral cancer in him, oral cancer. And it just anchored my belief that everybody that sits in my chair has someone that loves them just like I loved him. So I had a lot of people counting on me to protect the health and wellness of that patient, because I do believe you protect what you love. And so my clinical habits developed at that point, you know, when I started this wellness program, to focus on life-saving screenings. And the thing is, the Lifeguard approach has cracked the code on not having enough time in your appointment to do life-saving screenings. And when you get to your patient living in the safety zone, guess what? They don't have calculus anymore. That was the biggest thrill I found from using the lifeguard approach and shifting him from the danger to the safety zone. Was I didn't see calculus anymore. So I had plenty of time to do life-saving screenings during my visit. So
I love that. Well, let's talk about the lifeguard approach. Will you give us some more information? You know, what is it? How can it help our patients? How can it help us connect with medical professionals? Because I think obviously that is a big part of how this all works. You know, I'm talking to so many hygienists, and it's easy to feel limited in what we can do from our end, because to some extent it is, right? So we've got to have the support and collaboration with the medical professionals to provide those most optimal outcomes.
well, I think the biggest thing you can do is connect, you know, the mouth to the rest of the body, which we should be doing. And that goes along with, we now know
Yes. Yes.
that there are 5 high-risk pathogens that whenever your gums bleed, if you have these in your mouth, they get entrance into your vascular system. And here's what we know about heart attacks and strokes. So, yeah, it's got to happen. And I think the other thing that is really important, yeah, it's just so important. Update your questions. The thing that was, update your questions to match the science. And the thing that was so comforting to me was I realized I didn't have to know all the answers, but I had to know the questions to ask.
Yes.
And when I knew the questions, if somebody said, well, what do you know about that? I could be honest and say, you know what, I'm just learning about this myself too. And here's a resource that I think you can use. And let's learn together on that. So I'll follow up with you. And you know, we can learn together. But as hygienists, we don't have to know all the answers. Just learn to ask some quality questions. And that's kind of what I specialize in. And the lifeguard approach is really trying to do, is to upgrade and match our protocols on how we take care of patients with the science out there today. We can do a much better job at that.
Yes. Well, and I love that you've created this, and obviously we're going to link in our show notes how to get more information about really embracing this approach and getting this information. But I think this is beautiful, because this is what I hear so many times from hygienists is, I don't know all the things. And the reality is, you guys, we're never going to know all the things. This is science. It is constantly changing and growing. There's always more and more to learn. But I think patients know when you're being authentic. They know when you really are in it for what's best for them. They see that, they know that. So it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I'll help you figure it out. We'll find it. You know, but what I do know is this, what we now know is this, exactly what you're saying, Cris, is there's been a lot of fear behind, I don't know how to introduce this information to patients. So I love that you have created this lifeguard approach to be able to do that. And I got
go ahead. Sorry. There's another part to that besides the hygienist saying, well, I don't know all the answers. And they also, I think, feel like, and my partner, Kim Miller, pointed this out the other day when we were talking to Amy, is that she said, not only do we not maybe know how to do or answer all our patients' questions, when we do a life-saving screenings, then what do we do with that information? Say when a patient has high blood pressure. Well, what am I supposed to do with that information besides just write it down in the chart? So we help educate them on what they can do with the information that they find out. And that brings me kind of to another point where I'm just starting to research, and I'm going to have a lot to say about this in in a very short period of time. But what we're talking about and taking great care of patient comes down to what I feel is lacking greatly in the medical and dental community today, and that's compassion. A lot of people are talking about, you know, they've done their strength finders and they're empathetic and they have all these strengths. And there's a difference between having empathy
Yes.
for a patient and compassion. And that difference is that empathy is missing action. Compassion has action to it. It isn't compassion until you add an action. So you're compassionate enough and you care enough about your patients to do and create time in your appointment to do life-saving screenings. So that's an action right there, which creates much more compassion. And then when you are talking to their physician or passing that information along that you found out, that's another act of compassion, is that you care enough to,
Yeah.
let's be thorough, let's follow through, let's follow up with that patient. And I think that type of compassion is greatly lacking today. So that's part of my mission.
Yes, I love
In,
that. And it's very, very true.
in fact, a man by the name of T. Denny Sanford 4 years ago donated $100 million to San Francisco USD, University of California at San Diego. And he gave them $100 million it wasn't for cancer research or for any other kind of research. It was the money to start the Institute of Compassion.
Interesting.
Because he feels that there is such a need, because compassion towards our patient and compassive action creates amazing benefits. And one of them is what you had asked me about earlier, was the helper's high and the giver's glow. When we take great care and give something to our patients, like follow through and thorough screenings, whatever, that act of giving something to our patients creates in the brain a phenomenon that they can see on brain scans called the helper's high and the giver's glow. So giving is how I have turned just being more than being able to survive into thriving as a result of Gary's death. So I became addicted to the dopamine and endorphins and oxytocins that are created when you give to your patients and to others. And so giving is my favorite word, and it has made such an impact for me that I've almost become addicted to those three things that can get, put into your body when you do something like giving. And it's amazing to me that they can see those scans, see it on the scans with compassion also.
Yeah, well, it's not surprising. I feel like this is how we are wired as humans, is to connect with one another and help one another and give to one another. And we are sitting in this, I say all the time, hygiene is such a gift when we do it right. It's this beautiful gift to the patient, of giving them what they need to have a really excellent, healthy, quality, longevity life. But also it creates that fulfillment that I think we all desire within ourselves, of taking care of others. And I know you'd agree, after being a hygienist for so many years, that it can really be draining to give of yourself. And I think doing it the right way, and more of this, lifeguard approach, is where you're giving from a place of, like you say, compassion and healing and helping someone. That's where the fulfillment lies. I think there's still a lot of hygienists stuck in the giving so much of themselves. And it's not necessarily in that compassionate way. And it's not really to the outcome that we're talking about here. And that can be very draining. So I think it is really understanding how to do this in this beautiful way that does create life and life for the patient as well as the hygienist and the provider.
Yes, and it is, you know, so many of the hygienists are getting burned out today and leaving the profession. I'm really concerned for our patients' sake at the amount of professionals that are leaving the profession. But, you know, I thought I was burned out too in 2000 when I quit my job. But what I found out was that I wasn't burned out. I was suffering what's called moral injury. And that's very different, two different things. And burnout, they make you feel like if you say to somebody that you're burned out, it's like you have a problem here. You can't tolerate working in a fast-paced office. And, you know, it's all about you and your shortcomings. And all you need to do is go to a yoga retreat and you'll feel better. But moral injury is more about you feel a value conflict and a way that you would prefer to take care of patients, but you can't because of the limitations of time, the philosophy of care, of the practice. There are lots of things that are contributing to it more than just typical burnout. And so it's not about you and what you're lacking, but more about what you value and what you haven't figured out how to give to your patients yet.
Yes.
And so that to me was a big distinction. And so after I quit, I decided after taking 6 weeks off, I was going back. But I was going back under very different terms because you could never go back and have it the same way. You've got to figure out a different approach.
Right.
So that's what I did.
Well, I am so grateful for your time with us today and for creating this lifeguard approach. And I have to say of myself, I feel like I'm going to check this out and dig into this myself. Because I do feel like I practice this way, but there's so much value in listening to what other people are doing and learning the questions they're asking and helping set yourself up for success. I feel like we can never learn enough. It is an ongoing process. So I'm super excited to be able to connect you with our audience. And I want you to share, how do our listeners find you and learn more about this lifeguard approach?
You can email me at Cris@thelifeguardapproach.com, and Cris is spelled without an H. So it's CRIS@thelifeguardapproach.com. And that's our website too. And our website is being totally revamped. My partner and I, Kim Miller, we are totally redoing it. So if they go there now, they're not going to find quite as much on there, but stay tuned and come back and visit again because it's going to be very, very different. Yeah, and stay tuned for my book coming out.
Yes, we will. And I would love, once you've got that out, let me know. Maybe we can do another podcast for you to kind of promo that and share a little bit about that, because I would love to get that in the hands of the listeners as well.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for your time, for your passion, for your expertise, and for not being content just to let somebody swim in the pool with gum in their mouth. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you to all of the listeners today. Go check out Cris and the Lifeguard Approach. I think this is something we all need. Everyone have a great week taking care of your patients. Be sure you are practicing compassion, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.